Oops. Hang on a second. That's not supposed to happen, is it? I enter the studio and then the little grey thing is indicating that the microphone is picking up noise, but there's no noise in here, so I don't know what's going on. So yeah, how's it going, guys? Nordic here. Let me know in the comment section if the audio is okay. I just figured something out in regards to the how this laptop interacts with the microphone. I've realized that when I do a stream on StreamYard, the audio settings turn down automatically, but they actually turn down after the stream is finished. And since I turned the settings up before starting this, I don't know how it's going to sound. So yeah, let me know. Obviously let me know in the comments section. So yeah, we'll just wait for a few more people to join, and then I'll get started with this throughout this stream, because I'm not going to be on too long, maybe a couple of hours. I got a phone call just there from one of my managers, and I've been offered a shift tonight. So yeah, I wasn't going to be working tonight, but I am going to. Let me see if I can fix that. The sound is kind of hacky. I'll see if I can. Is it like too loud? Is that the problem? Because again, it seems to be picking stuff up. So I can edit that in my actual. Well, according to this, it's gone down to 67. What sucks is I can't hear it. I'll bear with me a second. I'll see if I can fix it. 1 minute. Or does it sound better now? Is it different to what it is? Again, because I recorded something for my other channel, and I ended up having to scrap it and redo it because basically my voice was way too quiet, and because I was like recording gameplay footage, and I was doing I was doing a walkthrough, and the game was way louder than my voice, and it was because I used StreamYard, and like I said, StreamYard, I don't know how it does it. StreamYard seems to go into the it seems to go into your actual laptop microphone settings and turn it down automatically. Yeah, I'll faff about with it and I'll see if I can fix it. 1 minute, I'll go on mute for a sec. All right, I've disconnected it, reconnected it, and then turned the volume down a little bit to where I normally have it when I do streams. And the light is now no longer orange like it was in my previous stream. It's actually green. So does it sound better now? Because again, I want to make sure this is fixed before I really get into this stream. I don't want to be like redoing everything. So yeah, let us know if it's sounding better. If you want to find a good recording software for gameplay, take a look at something called Bandicam. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. See what I usually use is I use my Elgato HD capture card. It's one of the older Elgato models from I think 2016 or something. And yeah, I bought it secondhand, and basically I just connect my microphone to the computer and record it automatically onto the software. But the problem is, like I say, because I'm using this same computer to do streams, for whatever reason, it changes everything. And I don't really understand why it can't just stay at the same settings that I'm comfortable with. I don't know why it has to keep changing, but I'll do the stream for now. If anybody can let me know if the audio is like really bad, let me know. Yeah, how's it going, chicken? And oh yeah, and shout out to Delboy as well. Yeah, thanks, man. Big up Nordic. Yeah, good to see you, Mark. Yeah, God bless you too, brother. God bless you, Ralph. Yo, Nordic, thoughts on the fights? I'll talk a little bit about the fights here and there, but I want to focus more on more important stuff with this video, because I got a lot to say. And yeah, I will need to I'll need to look into that because it might be better. Yeah, how's it going, Owen? Good to see you, man. God bless you, brother. It still baffles me the reason he got shot. Not gonna lie, I don't know anything about Kirk. I'm not emotional, but his death is symbolic of everything wrong. Do you know, guys? I've been obviously when I made that first stream and my initial reaction to it. Let's not be honest. I'm sorry. Let's be honest. I meant everything I said. I was absolutely 100% genuine. Was I a little bit reactionary? Did I go over the top a little bit? Maybe. Was my reaction constructive? Should we say? I don't really know. But what I will say is, I think what annoyed me about it the most, the reason I was so angry and the reason I was so bitter towards basically everybody on each side, is because you guys that have been following me for a long time will know ever since I was in my early 20s and started to get a little bit politically active, I've been trying to tell people that this is not a both sides issue. Okay, when you try to enter the sphere of politics and you do so without having some sort of spiritual standard to go by, be that your religion or your overall ethical beliefs, if you go into politics without that, you're basically just playing a game, and it's a dirty game where you're just trying to get as many people to listen to you as possible, as many people to follow you. You become caught up in political factions, and it kind of blinds you to what's really going on. And a lot of people on the right, from what I could tell, for as long as I've been alive, and more than likely even before, if you look at a lot of the boomers and people who came before us and whatnot, a lot of these people don't seem to, they can't seem to wrap their head around the concept of spirituality. They can't seem to wrap their head around the concept of demonic possession and things of that nature. They seem to think that when you sit, let me tell you guys a little story. I was actually going to make a video about this about 2 years ago, and I didn't make it, right? There's a very, very famous saying that you'll hear from boomers, right? And I'm talking specifically about conservative boomers, old school Republicans. What you'll hear these people often say is they'll talk about how back in my day, we were able to sit down and have a conversation with people that we disagree with, people on the left, liberals and whatnot. And after we've had our debate, our discussion, our disagreement, we would sit down with these people, shake their hands, and we would go for dinner with them. So essentially, that's what they use that to basically berate us, us young, edgy 90s conservative Christians, right? They tell us that we're going about things the wrong way, whereas in their day, the day of the boomers, things were just so much more civilized, right? They could sit down and have a political discussion. Politics wasn't as partisan. It wasn't as inflammatory. It was basically just a job, right? It was just something you did. And again, you can have these disagreements with people and you could sit down and talk to them. And the idea is that they are so good, right? The boomers and the old school conservatives, and we are so bad, right? We're these young whippersnappers, these young, edgy, angry, millennial conservatives, and we're the problem, right? Because we're not willing to sit down with these people and talk to them. And the response I've always had to that, and it's something that in my personal life I generally kept to myself, but as I get older and as I get edgier, I'm a lot more outspoken with this sort of thing. That type of behavior, the type of behavior that they berate us for and virtue signal about, right, and big themselves up about, that kind of behavior, sitting down with the left, talking to them, being nice to them, treating them like human beings. That kind of behavior is exactly what got us in this position in the first place, right? The reason why leftism, which let's be perfectly honest about it, is just total insanity. All right, if you look at the kind of people all across social media all across the world of politics. If you look at the way that they present themselves, how they represent their faction, right? How they represent their side. They are the party of literal insanity. Okay, that's what cultural Marxism is. Cultural Marxism is institutional insanity. So by treating people like that, who, let's be honest, 200 years or so would have been thrown in a mental asylum and would have been the subject of not necessarily ridicule, but deep psychological study to try to find out what's wrong with them and why they're like that. To actually sit down with people like that, to entertain them and to treat them as equals, to act as if you're just having you're just having a normal discussion with a member of your family or a friend who you happen to disagree with on sports or something, and to sit down and have dinner with these people. What that essentially has led to is the situation we have now, where insanity and evil has been normalized and minimalized. Okay, so it's these boomers, these old school conservatives, and their inaction as well as their action, which led us to the state that we're in right now and the things that we have to deal with. I'm absolutely terrified to have children in this day and age, because how could I take my eye off them for a second? How could I send them to school to be indoctrinated? I'm scared to let my missus out herself. It's we're living in a world now where you can't like turn your back for a second. You can't take your eye off the ball. We're all targets. They want to exterminate us all. They made this very, very clear, right? And the reason we're in this. Sorry, guys, one sec. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Love you too. Bye. See you later. Sorry about that. Yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. But yeah, basically, what was I saying? That very, very soft and very, very nice and friendly version of conservatism is what led us to the position we're in now, where insanity, rather than being dealt with, rather than being institutionalized and studied, and rather than measures being put in place to try to prevent it from happening again. It's a situation where, like again, that inaction and that passive aggressive behavior has led to what we have now. So when they berate us and they try to make it seem as if we're extremists and stuff like that, just because we recognize, and that's the problem, we recognize that their approach from 40, 50 years ago didn't work and caused more problems than it solved. I honestly think it's a situation where more people need to realize that, okay? And that generation, as far as I'm concerned, they just need to bugger off. Okay, I'm done talking to them. I'm cutting all ties with them. It really is what it is. But yeah, and that's the thing. What a lot of people are exposing, and I literally earlier this morning I watched a video on Piers Morgan's YouTube channel. Obviously, I am not a proponent or a supporter of Piers Morgan, but he had a very interesting panel. And on that panel, he had Jack what's his name, Pacibic, who was a good friend of Charlie Kirk and a guy who's quite politically active on social media, particularly on Twitter, right? And you had some other guy, I forget the guy's name, Andrew. He was another like conservative Christian. You had some black liberal guy who's also apparently a preacher who like stormed out after like 2 minutes. You had that woman from the Young Turks, and then you had some guy who I didn't know who this guy was. I'd never listened to him before, but I can only describe him as a literal demon possessed husk of a human being who was basically on there blaming everything on Donald Trump and whatnot, and showing absolute contempt for everybody else on the panel, and essentially implying that the world would be a better place if they all just died, right? So I listened to that, and I figured Jack Pasabic's reaction to that whole thing, his overall demeanor, the things that he was saying, or the lack of, because he's a guy that's normally quite outspoken. His lack of dialogue during that whole panel, what I looked in that man's eyes and I saw the black pill. That's what I saw. I looked in his eyes and I saw the black pill. That's a guy who realized this isn't worth it. I'm getting absolutely nowhere being involved in politics. You cannot talk to these people. You cannot reason with these people. It's too far gone. And that's why and he was actually crossing himself, doing the sign of the cross while he was listening to these people talk. And he said very, very little himself. And it goes back to what I've been saying on here for a while, the whole black pill mentality is, and I feel like the black pill mentality, and there's different ways to interpret it, but to me, it's a logical and rational response to the state of the world right now. Because if you try to get involved in politics, let's say I was to, because I'm a working class guy, with a family and stuff like that, and let's say I was to continue to do what I do, continue to build up my nest egg and go about my life and whatnot. But I was to also get involved in politics. And I have a close friend who does this. Like one of my friends down in Nottingham runs for the Reform Party, for example, and he does that part time while he works a full time job. And it's a situation where if you were to do that, you would have to be constantly on your guard at all times, because the mainstream media, who whether or not we like it, are essentially protected by the government and by the law. They can say whatever they want, do whatever they want, defame whoever they want. They will never face the consequences for it. All it would take is one article from The Guardian to label me a far-right extremist, white supremacist, Nazi, and one of two things are going to happen to me. One, I'm gonna lose my job, lose my livelihood. My family are going to be constant targets for harassment. Nobody would touch me with a 10-foot pole in terms of employment, or having me on their show, or allowing me to have a voice to discuss my arguments and my policies. And the only other thing that would happen is my literal death. They would assassinate me. It makes you wonder: is it worth it? Is politics even worth it? Is it worth even having a political ideology when the vast majority of the people in society have no agency? And because they have no agency, they can't really be held accountable. Okay? When you have no agency, nothing you say or do is from the heart. Nothing you say or do is authentic in any way. You are essentially a husk of a giant hive mind. Okay, imagine, and there's a lot of fiction that is inspired by this. Imagine you're a demigod or something, right? And you end up essentially tapping into the mind telepathically of every single person in your country, and you mentally enslave them, and you turn them into zombies, essentially, that are your acolytes, right? That are just regurgitating the same stuff that's coming from your mouth and your mind, and they don't have any agency or any thoughts of themselves, right? It becomes a hive mind. That's exactly what you have with the vast majority of society. Okay, the vast majority of people, they've never listened to Charlie Kirk. If you look at some of the comments of the people I had to block on my last video, say, oh, just because he took a picture with a black person doesn't mean he's racist. Now, let's ignore the fact that he hosted the Young Black Leaders movement, invested in black education, black entrepreneurship, made very, very, very many connections with people in the whole black conservative movement, and rubbed shoulders with these people for years and years, did more for that community than most politicians, despite being a 31-year-old man who's basically a social media influencer, right? He did more for that community than probably anybody I can think of, right? But just because he's Charlie Kirk, he's a conservative, that means he's a racist. That's the default position. So someone will comment on my video and say, he took a picture with a black person. That means he's not racist. and that's a sarcastic statement, right? So I asked this person, why is he racist? What? Again, the burden of proof is on you. You have to convince me that he's a racist. You haven't done that. You're assuming that I grant you your premise that he's a racist. Why is he? Based on what exactly? And they have nothing. They don't even respond. Like, you'll see me going crazy in the comment section, asking these people to provide me some sort of citation and some sort of evidence for the claims that they're making about Charlie Kirk. They can't do it, so I block them, and then I get accused of censoring free speech and being, I get accused of not allowing people to voice their opinion. Well, again, I give you like in my last live stream, right? There was people in the comments saying Charlie Kirk's an asshole, this, that, and the other, and Charlie Kirk's this, he's that, and I gave everybody on there the opportunity to tell me why, to provide me some sort of evidence for the things that they're saying about him. And I even asked a lot of people, have you ever actually listened to Charlie Kirk? Have you ever listened to the guy for more than 5 minutes? But no, what you'll do is you'll take one quote, like, if I was on a plane and a black person was the pilot, I'd wonder if he was qualified, right? They'll take that and they'll say, that's a racist statement. He's a racist, completely ignoring the entire context of that statement. The fact that he was talking to a black person who was trying to argue in favor of DEI, all right? And his point was, you're making it so that the United Airlines, whatever company it was, he was critiquing. The point was that company had a quota that they had to have a certain amount of their staff be black or female, right? So they weren't hiring people entirely based on their ability to fly a plane and their competence and whatnot. No, they were hiring people specifically based on their race, lowering the standard of excellence. That was the context behind that quote. But these scumbag demons who are not, again, they're part of a hive mind. It's like Dagoth and the Sixth House. If any of you have no idea what I'm talking about, most of you probably have no idea what I'm talking about there, but I digress. That's literally what it's like. They see the quote, they see one clip, they see it regurgitated all across the internet, and that becomes their perception of the man. That literally becomes their perception. Their perception of the man is he wants to stone all gay people to death. Never mind the fact that he's very, very close friends with many gay people, because when he was coming up through the ranks as an 18-year-old boy, founding his podcast and his network, he was very, very closely associated with people within the conservative movement who were gay, right? Who just happened to be that way. And he never once said that he agreed with that lifestyle. He never once said that it was something that was that it was a compromise for his faith. No, but what he did was he spoke to those people. He attempted to reason with those people, as well as to empathize with those people, and to what's the word I'm looking for? And to understand them. He met them where they were, not where he wanted them to be. And he always made a point to let these people hear the gospel. And he would do that on college campuses. So he would talk to, let's say he's talking to someone who's got blue hair, a septum piercing and stuff like that. Most likely that person has never heard the gospel, or if they have, they've heard an extremely twisted and watered down version of it. Charlie Kirk may very well have been the first and only time that person ever heard the gospel. So somebody like myself and most of you guys in this chat, we're more like hardcore conservatives. We'd see a person like that and we'd say that person isn't worth it. They're not worth talking to. All right, they're not willing to listen. They're not willing to learn. They're too far gone. Charlie Kirk did not have that attitude towards those people. When he would talk to those people, he would talk to them. He had a very, very good knack for talking to everybody the same, regardless of who they were. Again, you could be a transgender. You could be, a member of the LGBT movement. You could be an activist, things like that. You could be somebody who uses profanity in every other word. You could be someone who's a drug addict, or somebody who's a nihilist, an atheist. You could be anything. And Charlie Kirk would talk to you as if he was talking to his own brother in Christ. And that is what he had. That's the effect he had on people. That's what made him so dangerous. That's why they killed him, in my opinion. Again, he was the only exposure that a lot of people had to the gospel. Okay, and that is what made him so dangerous. And me in my life, I try to preach the gospel as much as I can, but I believe we're all given, we're all given certain talents in life, and Charlie had a great talent for that. And I hate to keep banging on about this, but it's important. I want people to stay very, very close to this Charlie Kirk situation because it's not going away anytime soon. That's another thing. I should start going on camera more so people know exactly who it is they're talking to. Because so many of these people like to hide behind aliases. They like to hide behind profile pictures, and you can't see them in their eyes. You can't see the windows to the soul, but you can see the windows to my soul. So even if you don't agree with me, you know that when I speak, I'm not speaking out of malice. I'm not speaking out of hatred. I'm not speaking out of bigotry. I'm speaking out of a genuine desire to preach the gospel and to essentially get through to as many people as possible. Unfortunately, it seems like a wasted effort when people in our movement are being killed. But it's interesting because, and I know that I talked about this in my previous stream. I don't know if I talked about it at length, but I did talk about it. Oh, sorry. I was talking about how basically when something like this happens, it's horrible. And there were so many people all across the internet, even people I spoke to in person as well, who were of the same opinion that what happened to Charlie Kirk really, really took them by surprise. Not the fact that it happened, because assassinations happen all the time. Look, Christians are killed all the time. If you look at what goes on in Nigeria, in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, in Lebanon, for example, I could tell you an interesting story. I spoke to a Lebanese person recently in person, somebody who was part Lebanese anyway, and told me some interesting things about that region. My point is, Christians are killed all the time. People are killed all the time. It happens more often than anybody will admit. But the thing is, with the Charlie Kirk situation, it hit people so hard. Even people who had never heard of Charlie Kirk before, were posting videos. And go look on Twitter and you'll see that they're posting videos saying, "Why do I feel so hurt by this? What's going on?" And it makes you wonder if there's some sort of, like, a lot of people have wondered if there's some sort of psyop here, like there's some sort of psychological manipulation where this story was presented in a particular way where it got such a response. Now, that's what you would logically think if you're not a spiritual person, if you're not a believer in Christ. I believe the reason why the Charlie Kirk situation hurt so much, and I believe that despite Charlie Kirk, most of us on here probably never met the man. Most of us on here didn't know a whole lot about him. I obviously did because I followed him very closely. But even people who didn't know who he was before his assassination their hearts were bursting with sadness and anger when he died. The reason for that, and this is why I won't have anybody on here making such a big deal about Charlie Kirk being a Zio shill or any of the the common retractions to the kind of person he was. I won't have it because the way that we're all feeling, what it is, it's spiritual sadness due to righteousness, because Charlie was, and that's the thing, he was a genuine born again believer in Christ. You could see it by his fruits. The Bible talks about judging people by their fruits. Okay, and by their fruits, it essentially means their actions and what they do and what impact they have on the world. And his impact was nothing but positive. And the way that people are acting, so there's three sides of this spectrum. There's people like myself who are deeply, deeply saddened and angry by what happened. There's people on the left who are seething with joy, right? If you look at when he died initially, like you look into these people's eyes and they're like, they're like that, so happy and overjoyous. They're like bloody Voldemort or something. That's how they were acting when he died. They're posting these videos dancing, and they were so euphoric. And even people who Charlie had debated, like the people at Oxford and whatnot, they were so It was like they'd just been freed from the plantation. They were so happy at the sight of him being murdered, and the fact his kids are going to grow up without a dad and things like that. They were happy about it. They were seething with happiness, right? And then you got people, kind of the nihilistic edgelords in the middle, who say, "I don't care." We've all seen the type, haven't we? There's a lot of people online who are like this. I never met Charlie Kirk. I only saw him on the internet. I don't feel sad about this at all. And if you feel sad about this, you're just I don't know. Those are the three, those are the three couple of what am I saying? The three common responses to Charlie Kirk's death. So you've got the Christians, you've got the leftists, and you've got the nihilists who like to sit on the fence and pretend that they're better than everybody. Oh, I'm not right or left. I'm a centrist. Oh, those types. I think we all know somebody like that. Every single community has them, right? It has a couple of those guys, and those are the types that change their mind every 2 minutes about everything and can't seem to stick to one particular standard or one particular belief. It just depends on how they feel one day. Basically, schizophrenic behavior. That's what that is. There's a lot of them in this. There's a lot of them in this community, and just there's a lot of them on both the right and the left, I find. But yeah, it's really telling because. And I sat the other night. I was kind of busy doing things, and there was a few memorials for Charlie Kirk on different channels. So there was memorials for him on the actual Charlie Kirk channel, on I think Fox News and some other things. The Turning Point channel, whatnot. So many people, like there was thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands. You couldn't see if you typed a comment. It would disappear immediately because the comments were like that. They were just going by like one after the other. It was on the screen for like less than a split second sometimes. All saying the same thing. Why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so hurt by this? And it's essentially, I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's like if people don't understand what they're feeling, that's because in your heart, spiritually, and look, if you don't believe in God, and you're not a born-again Christian, you're not going to care about this. It ain't going to mean nothing to you. In your heart, you knew Charlie Kirk. In your heart, he was your brother. It's like if your brother died, like I've got a brother, right? If your brother died, you would feel the exact same sadness that you felt when Charlie Kirk died, because that's literally what it is. You lost a spiritual brother. I talked about this on my other stream. Jesus Christ had many quotes that alluded to the fact that when you become a Christian, your blood relatives, your physical family, are not your only family, right? Believers all around the world, the followers of Jesus, okay, are literally, we are the church. That's what we are. Like, even I believe the Kirk name, like Charlie Kirk's name, ironically, actually means church, does it not? The local church that I go to sometimes when I stay up in Inverclyde is called the Mount Kirk. That's the name of that church. Now you can't tell me that that's not a coincidence, okay? Or that is. Sorry, you can't tell me that is a coincidence. That's literally, that doesn't happen by accident. I don't believe in coincidences. When Charlie died, the reason why we all felt it so much is because he is a brother in Christ, and sometimes things like this take a leap of faith. So what happened to Charlie? Again, you can point out flaws with Charlie like you can with anybody. You can say how, yeah, he rubbed shoulders with LGBT. He was a little bit too supportive of Israel in the beginning, this, that, and the other. You can say how he may have changed his mind on certain issues. Maybe he was too milquetoast. That's all true. I wouldn't disagree with it. But that spiritual despair that we feel, to me, that makes all that stuff completely unimportant. Because that tells me that he was genuine in preaching the gospel. And when you listen to him preach the gospel, when you listen to him talk about how Jesus saved his life, that is exactly, just listen to the way he says it and look into his eyes. You can tell you can tell that he meant it. He really did. And it's a shame that, because when I think about it, what Charlie could have done, if Charlie had left politics behind, again, that's kind of the subject of this stream. If he had left politics behind and just become a preacher and just preached the gospel, maybe he would have been in less danger because he wouldn't have been so influential in, getting Donald Trump elected and, convincing college students who are typically being indoctrinated by the left, convincing them to change their political affiliation and whatnot. So maybe he would have been less of a target. But I believe that, again, God is sovereign and he has a plan for all of us and he has us exactly where he wants us to be. And I believe that him getting so heavily involved in politics and getting people to change their political affiliation, again, that was in many cases the catalyst that led to these people hearing the gospel for the first time ever. Most of these people would have never heard the gospel. And hearing the gospel, believe it or not, is so much more effective than you think it is, because even if you're surrounded by demon-possessed reprobates and somebody preaches the gospel in your presence and in their presence, you might just see those reprobates in their truth, foresee the demon seething within them. And that might be enough to make you change your mind. And we're seeing that all across TikTok. I'd urge you guys to go and look at the amount of liberals on TikTok who have posted videos saying that they are leaving the Democrat Party and they are buying a Bible for the first time. They're stopping dressing like idiots and wearing a suit. I know that's kind of a bit of a pedantic thing to say, but that's literally what's happened. I've seen people say, Charlie spoke up and said that pastors and priests and people like that should dress appropriately. They should wear a suit. They should present themselves well. They shouldn't use profanity. They should be articulate and well-spoken. And there's a lot of dyed-haired, septum-having liberals on the internet who are now saying that they see Charlie Kirk as a role model. And in the aftermath of his death, they're gonna start reading his books. Like I saw numerous comments saying, because Charlie Kirk had a list of books that he recommended people read. I'm seeing numerous comments of people saying, to honor his memory, I'm going to sit down and read every single one of those books. Now that you can't tell me that isn't an act of God. You can't honestly tell me that. Like God is literally changing people's hearts, and he's capable of doing so. And again, we think Charlie's death is a bad thing. Is it really, though? It could literally turn out to be a blessing in disguise, because that is how the Lord works. Okay, he turns bad things. How many times has something bad happened to you in your life and it's ended up becoming a good thing down the line? I guarantee you it's happened more than once, No, because people believe in freedom of religion. That is, you can always be taken over by another religion. Worst is Islam. Christianity should be the religion of every Western country. Yeah. Well, I mean, that ties back to the arguments against the Crusades, for example. So the Crusades is something that the left always want to talk about. But the Crusades were a response, or more specifically, a retaliation to centuries of Islamic colonialism. So when the Islamists basically took over every single country near enough in the Middle East, when they took over Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, there was so many countries, Armenia, there's numerous Christian countries across the Middle East that were invaded by Islam, right? The followers and the descendants of Muhammad. And this went unchecked for generations. And it wasn't until the Catholic Church and the Holy Roman Empire, which at that point in time had become Christian. Obviously, they weren't always that. The Roman Empire used to be a pagan entity. Okay, it was a very, very evil, degenerate society. All right, that's what Jesus' crucifixion was all about. So you had a coalition between the Jewish Sanhedrin, who were the religious leaders at the time, and the Roman Empire, which were again a pagan empire under Caesar, right? And they bound together to take out Jesus, because Jesus was inspiring so many people to follow him, and he was performing miracles and whatnot. Both of those factions wanted him dead, essentially. But Jesus' death changed everything. The Holy Roman Empire literally became followers of Christ as a result of the aftermath of Jesus' resurrection, right? They became repentant. Many Romans turned to Christ, And the same with many Jews. You had so many Messianic Jews of the time. Everybody felt Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. It was felt all across the world. That's why every single country has a large Christian contingent. All right, it was because of the power of what happened on that cross. Now, you look at the death of Charlie Kirk, and I'm not comparing Charlie Kirk to Jesus, but Charlie Kirk lived by Jesus' example. He was a messenger of God because he read the gospel, he educated himself, and he did everything he could in his own way to spread that message. When Charlie Kirk died, his death has literally had a ripple effect all across the world. So many people feel that spiritual sadness on all sides of the political spectrum. And so many of them are buying their first Bible and turning to Christ. You can't tell me that that's not an act of God and that there isn't a similarity there, you know? So again, his death, although it's a bad thing initially, it could turn out to be a good thing, is all I'm saying. Like, it could turn out to be, honestly, a blessing in disguise. It really could. But yeah, we've gone off topic, haven't we? We really have. We really have. Don't you find it hilarious how everyone claimed a new age? I've never seen anybody. No offense to you. I've never seen anybody say that. You might be right. I've never seen it. Ricky Hatton have been struggling post, but yeah, look, Ricky Hatton. I've not got a lot to say about Ricky Hatton because I don't think I could really say it. You know, I don't think I could really do it justice. But let's be perfectly honest. Ricky Hatton had a lot of troubles. He had a lot of problems. He was a troubled individual. He couldn't handle the fame. He couldn't handle the attention. He had a very, very toxic, negative community around him that got him into drugs, alcohol, staying up all night partying, not taking care of his health, being ostracized from his family. He came from a relatively toxic family himself. His life was always going to end badly, unfortunately, and it's sad. It really is sad. But to be perfectly honest, as sad as I am about what happened to Ricky, it wasn't unexpected. It wasn't unexpected. It wasn't. So yeah, it's really sad. But yeah, God bless him. I hope that Ricky repented and trusted in Jesus. I really do. You can't be Christian and believe in freedom of religion, and democracy is not biblical. Every country that has freedom of religion and democracy has become less Christian and hostile, and sometimes hostile. Yes, but what you need to understand, Brennan, and let me be as delicate as I can here, believing in democracy, right, and freedom of religion is a pragmatic response to what's going on in the world right now. Are you telling me, and I'm not saying that your heart's in the wrong place for saying this, because I understand why you feel this way. Are you telling me that Christians should form an army, go on a crusade around the world, force people, like do what Islam did? Should we subjugate the entire world and force every single individual to become a Christian or be executed? Is that what you're saying? Because that's not a very pragmatic solution to what's going on in the world right now. Okay, democracy might have its problems, and freedom of religion and things like that might have its problem, but those concepts are useful tools in a modern 21st century society. They're useful tools that we could make use of. So I see what you're saying, but at the same time, it's not very pragmatic. Okay, and I don't believe that things would have gone as far as they have if God wasn't sovereign, or if it wasn't in God's plan for this to happen. The left had a conversation with us because they had to. Yeah, exactly. Now they don't want to or have to. In my country, they're just getting so much pushback, they've turned to violence. Yeah, but again, it's because they are objectively wrong. Their worldview is literally insanity. That is what their worldview is. So they can't sit there and have an honest and open conversation and convince people to capitulate to that insanity without resorting to violence. Okay, you can't do that. Yeah, exactly. Look, you can't even let your child travel home by bus where you're from. You can't, like, or where I'm from. Sorry, like because again, there's just so many dangerous people who won't assimilate into this country, and they're on our buses every minute of the day, causing trouble and getting in the way. That's just the way it is. How dare you call Canelo bum? Mate, look, who cares about Canelo right now? Like, there's more important things going on in the world. Grow up, dude. Honestly, grow up. Nice ringtone, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's just the one that came with the phone. I've not even changed it since I got it. People think they got fired for expressing their First Amendment rights, but the workplace shouldn't tolerate people they know are violently deranged. Well, let me ask you this, right? If you're a doctor or a nurse or a teacher or somebody who is in a position of power or in a position of protection, right? Let's say you are there's people under your care with your job, and you're out there openly celebrating the murder, the political assassination of someone you don't like or agree with. Would you be comfortable having a person in the care of that person? Let's say you work in a care home or you work in a children's home or something. Would you be okay with your child or your loved one in the care of a person like that, a person who clearly has sociopathic tendencies? Because I certainly wouldn't. I would be looking over my shoulder constantly. I would not feel safe having that, you know. Yeah, nice little wholesome call. It was. Did I forget to mute the microphone? Did you guys hear that? yeah. There was nothing interesting. But yeah, it was a nice little wholesome call. Yeah, God bless. Well, 60 to 80 years ago, the world was messed up. People seem to sugarcoat it. Yeah, but again, it's the actions of the conservatives of yesteryear that have led us to this point, and that's my argument. When they berate us and tell us that we're too extreme, what they don't understand is that we are reactionaries. We are reacting to the state of the world that they created. All right, the world is in the state that it's in because of them, because they allowed things to get to a certain point where the likes of us are necessary. Okay, the likes of us wouldn't be necessary if insanity was never I mean, if insanity was never pandered to, and I'm forgetting the word. I've used it many times on here. It'll come to me, but yeah, if insanity wasn't allowed to go unchecked the way it is, this reactionary ideology of people like us on the right, you know, it wouldn't be necessary. It wouldn't be. Validation, that's the word I'm looking for. If insanity wasn't validated, okay, for so many years, we wouldn't be in this position, you know. I don't really watch anymore, but I think he does it on a separate channel. Might only be on Rumble. Oh, you're on about BDA? Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, again, look, know what? Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. No one would win in a civil war. You know why? Because there would be a large percentage of our population and people on both sides would die. But many people are of the opinion that it's necessary. That's why I wanted to make this stream, because it's scary to think that that's where the world is going now, and there could be foreign agents from other countries and, you know, enemies of the United States, enemies of the West, who could be stoking this, and that's one of the things that concerns me too. You know, it really does. Sign your petition to take down Channel 4. Appreciate it, mate. I'm by no means a supporter of the MSN on both sides, but why do the left lie and state incorrect facts so much compared to the right, where it rarely even happens? That's because I talked about it earlier. People on the left do not do their own research. They will not look up Charlie Kirk, listen to his interviews, try to find out about the man. They'll watch Channel 4 and they'll hear whoever it is that's on Channel 4 nowadays say far-right conservative, white supremacist, Nazi Charlie Kirk. And that's their entire exposure to Charlie Kirk. That's all they know about Charlie Kirk. So they'll go online and say, yeah, he deserves to die because he's a far-right, white supremacist Nazi, because Channel 4 told me so. So that's why I made that picture. And look, guys, I'm not delusional. Let me make this perfectly clear. I'm not delusional. I know for a fact that petition is, no one's going to see it. I want as many people to sign it as possible, obviously. But let's be honest, as soon as it starts to make headway, it's going to get shadow banned. There's not going to be anywhere near enough people signing it for it to actually take effect. But I wanted to make it anyway because I wanted to do something. Okay, I don't just want to sit here and complain and bitch and whine about Channel 4. I want to actually put something in motion to send a message, let people know you're not on your own. Many of us want to see this evil, degenerate, satanic, reprobate organization brought down, and I'm gonna keep pushing that petition until enough people sign it. But it's not going to make a difference, even if the petition had 100,000 signatures. Channel 4 is protected by the BBC, by Ofcom, by every single major corporate entity in the British mainstream media, so they're not going anywhere. But I want to send a message, and I want to reach as many people as possible. Ideally, people would just stop watching them. Ideally, everybody would stop watching them, but that's not going to happen because most people are normies, and most people, as I mentioned already, have no agency. That's the problem. You know, I just want to say on the topic of Ricky Hatton, his friend in business found him dead at his home when he didn't show up for a fight. One of Ricky's friends took his life before Sunday. It's a tragic situation, man. Look, stay off drugs. Don't drink alcohol if you can't handle it. And, reconcile with your family to the best of your ability, because otherwise you'll end up in the situation Hatton was in, and it's really sad what happened to him, God bless him. There are a lot of idiots that believe the societies they live in are communistic or socialistic. It's really boneheaded. Well, again, a communistic society is China, right? If you look at China, and what's interesting about it, isn't it? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about hive minds and about people having no agency. Look, the way that China functions, for example, I know the Soviet Union was kind of like this as well, but the way that China functions is inconceivable to the average Westerner, right? The average American or the average Brit would look at a country like China, and let's say if they were to go and live there for a couple of years, they would not be able to conceive of how China operates. And that's because they do not understand communism. Okay, communism, and I've said this before, has led to the deaths of more people than any ideology in history. Okay, I mean, if you look at the Soviet Union, the communist leaders, people like Stalin, right, the communist leaders of the Soviet Union deliberately starved over half of their population. And that was a deliberate tactic because it's the only way communism can be implemented. Okay, depopulation and the disenfranchisement of an entire population, the disincentivization of entrepreneurship and succeeding in business and at life in general and stuff like that it's greatly de-incentivized more than disincentivized. It's basically made impossible in a communist society. Communism is literally like a giant hive mind. Okay, it's a situation where, let's say, the government will create a problem like crime and violence and stuff like that, and then they'll offer you the solution. The solution that they offer takes away all your rights, it takes away all your privileges, and gets rid of the problem, but replaces it with something much worse. That is essentially communism. And again, communism has killed more people than any ideology throughout history. It has caused more poverty than any ideology throughout history. And it's interesting how you see the politicians in this country and the celebrities and whatnot who promote communism. Do you think these people actually want communism? Do you think they want to live in a country like China? No, they don't want actual communism. What they want is they want to promote communism in a capitalist system. That's what they want. Okay, so they want to promote communism but still benefit from the privileges of capitalism. That's what they want, All right, this guy's getting blocked. I'm not even responding to him. Bye. Because he's just telling lies. Look, let me make this very clear. See, telling lies on my stream is not allowed. I don't take any prisoners, in that regard. So if you're going to comment on my stream, tell the truth. I'm not talking to Fight Scout. I'm talking about the guy who commented after him. The majority of people have no agency, but that means if we win, they'll follow what we say without critically thinking about it either. I know exactly what you're saying, but obviously we have to win for that to be a reality. But I actually do disagree with that to an extent, because if we win, they're going to be they're going to be not that they're not going to be hearing lies, are they? They're going to be hearing the truth. And look, if they have no agency, they can't think for themselves. Maybe it's best that they just do what we tell them. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that. I know that sounds morbid and scathing. It really does, but it's better than the alternative, isn't it? Short form content has been a convenient tool for the powers that be. Yeah, absolutely. Because people, another thing that goes with people having no agency is the lack of an attention span. That's what TikTok is all about. That the reason that TikTok exists is because people have no attention span. All right, that's why. 1 second. A couple of people are saying that my mic is. Let me scroll down to the bottom of the chat. Is my mic working, or are you guys hearing what I'm saying? I'll stop for a moment. Are you guys hearing what I'm saying? Let me know. I'll type it in the chat. Okay, I've unplugged the microphone and put it back in, and checked the connection. There doesn't appear to be an issue with the connection. Does it sound better now? Let me know. I'll also plug my charger in. That might help. Sometimes it does, I've noticed. Good. Yeah, that's my charger plugged in as well, and the microphone seems to be reset, so it's still choppy. Okay, so StreamYard is back to just not working then, I guess. I guess that's what's happening here. Let me faff about with it again. 1 sec. So how about now? Again, it's doing that thing again where it's indicating that it's picking up noise when there is none. How does it sound? Let me know. I'll turn the volume down a little bit. That might help. 1 sec, because it's turned itself up again. Oh, you hear me good now? Okay, okay. Yeah, the volume actually turned itself up that time. Like, I swear this thing's got a mind of its own. It turns itself up, it turns itself down. It just, I don't know, man. How do I even rationalize that? We live in democratic capitalism. Most people are getting paid to influence them, and they think like crazies, and it gets them paid. It's all about money. Yeah, exactly. But again, that goes back to what I was saying. They want to promote communism in a capitalist society. That's exactly what you're talking about there, you know. A septum ring is demonic. Have you seen the new ones nowadays? They're like upside down devil horns. They're starting to cosplay as Maleficent. It makes you wonder as well, why do these people get these? I don't understand why you would get a piercing. Like what appeal do piercings actually have? And why is it that people that get them always seem to be crazy? You know, it makes you think. A liberal guy told me Charlie wanted to decrease the number of transgenders, and it's akin to Hitler and Jews. He tried to get me to understand why he was killed. Whoa. how do you even respond to that? How do you even respond to somebody that far gone? You know, I disagreed with him on some issues, like Israel, for instance. That said, that was an incredibly brave man who had more balls than all of his opponents put together. They're all cowards. Yeah, exactly. And again, he would go into the Lions Den, like going into Oxford and debate anybody. He wasn't scared. And that's the thing. I feel like this is another reason why I feel like getting involved in politics feels like a waste of time. Because you have to have a debate, you can't respond to that. I got you. Charlie had basically an encyclopedic knowledge on so many things. Again, because the guy read 100 books a year, very, very well educated man. He had an eidetic memory, and he had basically an obsession with politics. The guy just knew basically everything politically. So when he was debating with somebody, he would. I've never seen him lose a debate because in addition to him always being nice and respectful, he always had a response for everything, right? Most of us on here don't have that encyclopedic knowledge and that memory, right? So we wouldn't be able to debate the way he does. And I think very, very few people in the world have that ability. You know, we would be stumped. We would have to stop and think. Even when Jordan Peterson tries to debate somebody, you know, he'll end up having to stop and think about his responses. He can't just respond immediately like Charlie Kirk could, you know. So I think that it's a situation where it's mentally exhausting. It's entirely it feels entirely like a waste of time trying to have debates with people when you know you can't get a point across without having to have some kind of gotcha one liner. You know, that's another reason I feel like it's a futile effort a lot of the time trying to be a politician. You know. Is your brother a normie? No, no, my brother's a Christian, and he's not a normie at all. He's a very good man, my brother. I love him very much. We don't see each other very often, but I love him very much, and I don't tell him enough. You know, I don't tell him enough. The crazies would still target him. They probably would, but that really depends on how much of an impact he has. If he doesn't have an impact at all, they might just ignore him, and he'd be less likely to be an assassination target. You know. Charlie Kirk was as moderate a conservative as you could possibly get, and they still shot him in cold blood and mocked his death. The left exposed themselves to the normies for what they really are. And I hope that the normies have enough sense this time to not think that this is just an isolated incident and think, oh, these are just crazy people on the internet. How many crazy people are there out there in the world? Right? It's not just crazy. Okay, this is literally leftist ideology. Leftist ideology is violent. Okay, it's akin to communism in how it dehumanizes people. Because when you have a society built on atheists, all right, and this is why, and I mentioned this earlier, if you're going to get involved in politics, you have to have faith. You have to have spirituality. You have to have some sort of objective, spiritual, spiritual moral standard. Okay, if you don't have that, what are you even doing in politics? Why would you care about politics? Why would you care about the standard of living or the concept of right and wrong? It doesn't make sense. When you have communism, and again, communism is the natural solution. The natural. It's a natural symptom of atheism or an atheistic society, right? Basically, human life is devalued. So you have a situation like what you have in China, like what you had with the Soviet Union. You have an entire society of demoralized, dehumanized people, okay, and a hierarchy of people in control who are greedy and all out for themselves, right? That's what communism is, okay? When God is taken out of the conversation, when Christianity more specifically is taken out of the conversation, that's when you get communism. Okay. So I cannot trust, and this is another reason I would never survive in politics. I couldn't do what Charlie did. I couldn't talk to atheists and treat them like my brother in Christ, because when you take God out of politics, you get nothing but tyranny and evil. Okay, because that's human nature. Human nature is inherently evil. Okay, we're inherently fallen. The Bible's very clear about this. Okay, and even if you're not a practicing Christian and you don't believe, you would be very, very hard pressed to not notice the inherent evil of humanity. Okay, and that the way that these people are acting, mocking Charlie's death, that doesn't surprise me one bit. Oh, she's back. um, 1 second, guys. Yeah, my missus just came in. She didn't know I was streaming. I didn't tell her. But yeah, what was I saying? Communism. Communism is literally it's a manifestation of a society that's forgotten about God, and where the ruling class of that society has is they don't have their heart in the right place. Essentially, that's essentially what that is. Yeah, thankfully, some on the left had morals and left. Yeah, yeah, and the ones that had morals, you'll notice, are no longer lefts. They're no longer on the left because they've seen it for what it is, and they're done. I think a lot of them were loyal to the Democrat Party simply because of tribalism, right? Like there was one woman I saw. She said she was 49 years old, and she's been a member of the Democrat Party since she was 18. So, like, as long as Charlie Kirk had been alive, that was what she said. She'd been a Democrat, and she said even though she'd been disillusioned with the Democrat Party for years, she continued to support them out of a sort of a misplaced sense of tribalism, right? And that's the problem, right? When you don't have an objective, spiritual, modern, moral standard, and instead you just see yourself as one of the tribe. You see yourself as part of a faction. You will turn a blind eye to a lot of tyranny in your movement. That's what often happens. It's like, say, if you're a Christian and your local priest is a pedophile or something, you might think, well, I don't want to get ostracized from this church, so I'm not going to speak out about it. If that's the case, you are not a genuine believer. You're not a genuine believer in that case because you're willing to. You don't have that moral standard that comes with being a Christian. You just like being part of that church. Well, that's the same as essentially, well, it's the same concept as being a Democrat and seeing what the Democrat Party has become and continuing to vote Democrat. It's the same. You can make parallels to people within a particular church who refuse to speak out against like an abusive pastor or something like that. Back in a second. Let me just do something. Sorry about that. All right. No way they're leaving the Democrat Party if they're still going to vote for them. They're saying it because it's unpopular to admit they enjoyed it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. No doubt some of them are just LARPing. Like, some of them are just, like, pretending they care, like that Chunk guy, for example, Cheng, whatever his name is. They're pretending they care because it's convenient to do so because it makes it look like you're taking the moral high ground. But I do think at the same time there are a lot of them that are genuine. Like when you look into their eyes and listen to them, and you see like the despair. Like that's something that's very very hard to fake, if you know what I mean. The Zog shows, but again, look, don't take this the wrong way. But I'm sick and tired of hearing about Zog shills. I'm sick of hearing about Zio shills. I'm sick of every single person on sort of the dissident right. And again, I've been guilty of this myself. I'm sick and tired of every single person looking at these conservatives like Charlie Kirk and like the Daily Wire and whatnot. And just because these guys are successful, just because they have a following and the kind of following that we could never get because we're not, let's be honest, we're not as articulate or as intelligent or as cunning, right? And just immediately saying these people are Zio shows, so that means we shouldn't listen to them. I don't think that's very constructive right now. I genuinely don't, and I think it's gonna. I get your heart might be in the right place, but I don't think that's very wise. It's the cunning because again, look, let's get this out in the open. The Israel of I just read a book about this recently. The Israel Palestine conflict, and that conflict. And the independence of Israel and that region in the Middle East, it's a lot more complicated than good and evil. It's a lot more complicated than being in support of it or not being in support of it, if that makes sense. It's a complicated, very very delicate political situation, and it's not easy for someone who's got a big following to talk about that issue without treading very carefully. It has Red Glove Militant. I've not seen you in ages. How you been? God bless you, bro. Yeah. How you doing, man? Yeah, Portugal and Spain. Absolutely right. They were taken over and subjugated by Islam, and were taken back due to the Crusades. People forget about that. Again, they'll talk about the Crusades as being like just a genocide, a murder, which is not what they were at all. Again, they were literally a response to centuries of Islamic colonialism. Hatton was a flawed fighter, but he wasn't a coward in the ring. Dirty, but always came to fight. I would pick him over the elite of the light welterweight division, but he would go for. Or I wouldn't pick him over the elite, but he'd go for it. Yeah, he was always game, and he was always very, very entertaining. And he had his flaws, but he was good. I really enjoyed watching him fight back in the day. Anyone else notice that more women are celebrating the murder? I was always told men are less empathetic. Yeah, I've noticed that too. But again, it's hard to say who's more empathetic, men or women, because there's people who are less empathetic on both sides. Yes, Nordic, the powers that be intentionally have promoted content that shortens the attention span. It feels like a seizure watching content mainly aimed at broccoli heads, Zoomers. Yeah, I can't deal with it. That's why I hated it when YouTube implemented the YouTube Shorts thing, because it just disincentivized making actual good videos, and instead making just like short, snappy one-liners, gotcha moments, and that's okay from time to time. But I don't particularly appreciate it, Okay, let me get this out of the way, because I looked into this. Claiming that it was Nick Fuentes who was behind the death of Charlie Kirk was just a flat-out fabrication of the media. It was flat-out slander. They're trying to claim that it was a groiper who was a fan of Nick Fuentes. That guy probably had never even heard of Nick Fuentes. Not only that, but the guy literally had fascist engraved on the bullet. And his boyfriend was a tranny. It had nothing to do with Nick Fuentes. The only reason the media are saying that they're using Nick Fuentes as a red herring because he and Charlie Kirk didn't agree. Because Nick Fuentes, like a lot of people in this chat and myself, felt that Charlie was too lenient towards the left and things like that. He felt that he was too milquetoast, and he's right about that. But again, Charlie had a reason to do that. But saying that implying that Nick Fuentes had the kind of clout to organize that assassination is just absurd as far as I'm concerned. It's flat out absurd. And the fact that it was even alluded to on the the fact it was even alluded to in the media tells me that they just will do anything and throw anybody under the bus to direct from their responsibility and their culpability in what happened. Bro, rest in peace to him, and may his kids grow up strong with God. Absolutely. God bless them all, Try to find where I was in the chat. What's most funny, the left think they are the same unless you are in complete submission, you'll be taken out too. Yeah, again, it's like join us or die. That's literally the attitude they've taken to this. And the Charlie Kirk assassination has emboldened them, making them think they can just come out and flat out say. That's why a lot of them are shocked when they lost their jobs for celebrating his death, because they thought being leftist gave them free reign. They thought they could say and do whatever they want because they're leftists, and that there wouldn't be any repercussions. Well, they're now finding out that that isn't the case. What the Soviets did to German civilians, and particularly women, is sickening, but it's been conveniently forgotten because Germany bad. Well, yeah, if you look at how Hollywood and the mainstream media portrays Germany, right? And I'm not saying that Nazi Germany was good. There's a lot of horrible things that happened during that period, and there were a lot of horrible political factions at that time. But it's interesting to me how the German Nazi Party are dehumanized and seen as demons, right? They're demonized and dehumanized, and they're always the bad guy. But the Soviets are, people seem indifferent to the Soviets, despite the fact that they were objectively worse. Again, the Soviet Union, when it was ruled by communists, starved more than half their population. Communism in general, all across the world, has, and despite the fact that most countries have never even have implemented communism, it's still, and it's a relatively recent concept, right? It has still killed more people than any political ideology in history. And the fact that people on the left so openly promote communism and support it tells you everything you need to know about where those people align and their moral compass, A left-wing influencer was mocked and attacked by his own side because he cried over Charlie being killed in front of his family. The left are demonic. Yep. And hopefully, I know he's probably upset, but hopefully that's a catalyst which turns him to the right. And again, I know there's people watching this and listening who are scared to leave a comment because they don't want to get called out. But I know for a fact there's people watching this right now, because we've got 32 people watching, and people keep jumping in and out. I guarantee you there's people watching this now who are dying to leave a comment on this stream and say, "Oh, it's not right. It's not just right or left. It's both sides. I'm better than both sides." But there's always the nihilistic, contrarian types, right? Who just have to be different and they just have to stand out. And they can't stick to a standard, or they can't stick to an opinion. It's got to change every day. And they've got to always tell you how much better they are than you, because they don't care, because they don't get emotional when someone dies. That makes them better somehow, and they're above taking sides in a political conflict. I know there's people dying to type that in my chat, but it's not. I tell you right now, that doesn't wash with me. Right, it's a situation where wherever you go on the internet, these are the people you run into. That's kind of what libertarians are like, right? And that's kind of what, again, it's what a lot of nihilists are like. It's people who constantly complain about the left, but then when it becomes somewhat fashionable to complain about the left, they then pivot and start complaining about the right. There's a lot of people I've run into recently who are like that, and I'm starting to notice that those people are. Because again, I talked a bit about schizophrenia in my last live, I believe, or at least I may have alluded to the correlation between schizophrenia and demonic possession and stuff like that. Those are people who are literally like dangerously mentally ill, and they don't even realize it. Like if you get a psychopath, if you look at someone like David Wood, for example, psychopath, right? He was en route to becoming a serial killer, right? But then in prison, he read the Bible, and he used that kind of anarchist obsession that he had, and he kind of channeled it towards Jesus. So it's like, for example, imagine someone like the Joker or something, like some crazy nihilistic serial killer finding Jesus, right? And there's people in the Bible, some of the apostles, for example, were like this. They were psychopathic people who found Jesus and became his apostles, and ultimately died in his name. I feel a lot of those people who make a very, very big deal about how little they feel about these situations and how much better they are than everybody on our side. I feel like those people are actual schizophrenic psychopaths who really, really desperately need Jesus. I genuinely do, you know. And I don't think that my response to this situation has been in any way amoral. I don't think my response to the situation has been in any way reactionary, to be honest. I feel like, well, it is technically, but it's a righteous reaction. The anger that I feel and the sadness that I feel is righteous. It's objectively moral. Like the positions that I have, and I might not be an expert on politics and stuff like that. I might not know absolutely everything about religion, but my political ideology and my religious beliefs are absolute 100% morally justifiable. And I'll argue that with anybody, you know. I will argue it with anybody. Even people smarter than me, more educated than me. I don't even care. Okay, just because you're well educated and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that you're right. Okay, just because maybe you see yourself as being more rational than others because you don't cry when someone dies and things like that. That doesn't make you right. That doesn't make you morally better than anybody. Okay, in most cases, it just makes you a psychopath. You know, and I've run into a lot of people like that recently, and you know they don't manipulate me. You know. They focus on Muslims when they make up 70% of the UK population. What about the other groups of minorities? Well, Muslims are a symptom of um, progressive ideology, you know, because look, again, do I even really need to point out the problems with, you know, trying to align progressivism with Islam? Okay, like, it doesn't make any sense. Islam is I mean, look, communism, it would be arguable to say what's worse as a political ideology, Islam or communism. I don't really know, if truth be told, because, you know, Islam was forced upon the world through violent subjugation. Communism was implemented through manipulation. You know, the Soviet Union, as well as China, has spies all over the world, or did have spies all over the world, manipulating the media and manipulating educational institutions and stuff like that to radicalize people and to essentially normalize and romanticize communism. You know, a lot of people grow up thinking communism is a utopia, that if the world were ruled under a communist dictatorship, it would be, you know, a giant hive mind. It would be, you would have world peace and it would be a utopia. That's what they believe. But these people, if they had genuine morality, if they believed in God and formed their understanding of morality from that, they would see the problems there. They would see that communism just does not work. It might be an idea in theory that sounds good, but anytime it's tried to be implemented, it's just led to the deaths of millions and the subjugations of millions. If you look at how the people in China live right now, they're treated like robots. They're dehumanized. Okay, the Soviet Union was the same, you know. So I don't see how you can be in a situation where you're trying to take the moral high ground and trying to promote communism. I don't see how you can do that. Trump has the chance to crush the left right now, but is doing nothing. Well, what I have never been able to understand about Trump, now Trump's the president, right? Supposedly the president of the free world, the president of the United States has a lot of executive powers. What I don't understand is why, despite having 2 terms of Donald Trump's presidency, why is the mainstream media still able to react or to behave with impunity? Okay, why is CNN allowed to post a headline, right-wing white supremacist Charlie Kirk and things like that? Why are they allowed to slander people? And I'm not saying that, like, yeah, people have sued them. Don't get me wrong, that definitely happens. But why hasn't Trump And again, you can call me. I know what the seething idiots who are watching this and too scared to comment are going to say. I know they're gonna say, "Oh, you're a fascist, and you want Trump to use his powers or to become a fascist dictator. That's what you want," which doesn't make any sense. What I'm saying is, why doesn't Trump use his power as president for the greater good to shut down political entities within the mainstream media? Why hasn't CNN been held accountable? Why haven't the executives of CNN been thrown in federal prison when they are literally posting fake news and slander? It's flat out slander about people like Charlie Kirk that lead to his death. Okay, a man who has never said anything even remotely racist in his life, has never called for violence against anybody whatsoever. And an organization like MSNBC and CNN are allowed to publish articles and to put all this fake information out there, radicalizing people against him, leading to his death. Why hasn't Trump used his power as president to shut that down and throw these people in federal prison? Because I'm pretty sure as president of the United States, he can amend laws if and when necessary to make that happen. Again, I know what you're going to say. Oh, that's fascism. And my response to that is, so fucking what? Like, you see what I'm trying to say? So what? I mean, is fascism inherently a bad thing? Now, I'm not saying I agree with fascism, because I think it really depends on who's in power, and that's why you need. And somebody here earlier, I forget who it was saying that. I think it was Brennan. He was saying that democracy is inherently flawed. You can't have democracy and be a Christian, or have a Christian society. Now, democracy is probably necessary, and like I said before, like earlier in the video or the stream, democracy is a pragmatic system. It's a pragmatic response to what's going on in the world right now and to the society that we currently have. Okay, you can't just have a Christian crusade and have us take over the world. That would be utopian thinking. Okay, but fascism, and I don't mean like extreme fascism, like say the Roman Empire, where you have Julius Caesar ruling the vast majority of the world, but a certain amended democratic iteration of fascism, right? You could call it fascism if you want. You could come up with a different word for it. Please explain to me why that's bad. Please, somebody, one of these nihilistic geniuses. I've had conversations with people recently about this, like these nihilistic geniuses who conveniently just change their mind whenever it's suitable, whenever they want to sound different. Tell me why fascism is bad. Why is it inherently bad? You don't just say you're a fascist and have that be your argument. Explain to me why it's better than the alternative. Why is it better than communism? Okay, why is it better than democracy in the form that we currently have it, which is essentially, I mean, theoretically it's mob rule, right? It might not always be that, but like, it might not literally be that, right? But theoretically, if enough people want it, they get it, right? Why is that better than fascism? Now, I can see why it's better than fascism under certain circumstances. If you've got an evil dictator in charge of the world, is Donald Trump an evil dictator? Is there a single conservative, Bible-believing Christian? I'm not saying that's what Trump is entirely, but is a single Bible-believing Christian an evil dictator? Would they misuse their power? Would they? And I have absolutely no idea why you would think that was bad. Why fascism as a very, very concept, as a very specific concept, is bad. Now, I understand why it can be misused. Obviously, that there are numerous fascistic leaders in history that misuse their power. Okay, but that doesn't mean that some form of fascism is inherently bad. That doesn't mean that at all. And I mean, if you look at the way that the left behave, you could be, again, like Charlie Kirk, you could be a moderate conservative and be called a fascist, even though you don't even believe in large government. You could believe in literally government staying out of your personal business entirely. And because you have conservative family values, you're still a fascist, according to these people. So And it makes an interesting topic of discussion. I would love to talk to somebody about this. Like, I would love to have a discussion with somebody who maybe disagrees with me on this, but have it be respectful. But that's not going to happen, because people who generally disagree with me on this are very, very sly individuals that are just looking for gotcha moments, and they would probably try to capitalize on my Christian faith to say that I'm radical and that I can't be reasoned with without that. And that's probably true, because like I said before, without the concept of God, how can you be a politician? How can you care about people? How can you care about laws and family? Like, how can you care about all that without the concept of God? You know, the left only support Palestine when they see Israel as a white colonial power. Yeah, yeah, exactly. They do. I've seen that. Like in Glasgow, there was Palestine protesters who were saying this is an end to white colonialism. Whereas, I mean, are Jews and Arabs not? Are they not both mixed race essentially? Are they not from the Middle East? Is that not where they all descended from? You know, many of them descended from Abraham, right? So I don't see how you can make that a race issue. I don't know, man. We could get into talking about that. There's a lot of things you could say. Yeah, I think it was organic as far as right now. There's no evidence of the juice plant. Yeah, and the people that are saying it, I think it's just a default position. That's the default position that they have to such things. It's that every single somewhat mainstream conservative, because they're more successful than I am, it means they're being paid by the Jews. You know, that's the in that, and again, I've been guilty of this too. That's just the default position many of us reactionaries have. You know, I just want to go to Switzerland route, and I'll go the Switzerland route and stay out of foreign politics or foreign conflicts that have nothing to do with us. Strict neutrality. Do you know? I wouldn't argue with that, and there are many people out there who believe the same thing. Like, I would love it if, for example, Scotland were to, or not just Scotland, the entire United Kingdom were to entirely cut themselves off from foreign political conflicts. But unfortunately, that's just not pragmatic in the world we live in. There's been too many international agreements. You know, there's too many people with multiple nationalities and things like that. It just would never work. It would never work. It's in theory it makes sense, but it's not very pragmatic. YouTube Shorts makes you dumber. It feels like I feel dumber watching them, especially if they're AI. Yeah, the AI thing's really annoying me because I mean, it can be funny. Don't get me wrong. You know, when you make somebody do like a fake interview, and some of them are quite funny, but I think it gets a bit too far when it's being used to what do you call it, to smear people. You know, they completely ignore the tranny boyfriend and say he was a Republican. Yeah, he's a Republican with a tranny boyfriend. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, how can people be so ignorant, you know? The left celebrated the shooter and then have the audacity to turn around and say it was one of your own. They're incredible gaslighters. Again, that's what the media told them, and they believe it, even though it's been comprehensively debunked, because the governor of Utah, as well as the FBI, the police, you know, the local police department, determined based on their investigation that the man was a leftist who was radicalized by left-wing influencers in the mainstream media and had a transgender boyfriend. So, I mean, how can you claim he was a Christian Republican? He might have Christian Republicans in his family, but that doesn't mean anything. All right, lots of liberals grew up with Christian parents and then grew up, basically were raised by the TV and grew up to hate their parents. They grew up rebellious, you know. They're against gun violence unless gun violence silences who they deem the threat. Yeah. Well, you don't see conservatives going out shooting people. Again, this is what pisses me off. When people try to say it's a both sides issue. Name me one conservative Christian who has gone out and shot somebody on the left. Name me one. Just one. If you can name me one actual conservative Christian who actually shot someone on the left for no reason, then we can have a discussion. But if not, then it just goes to show you that it's not a both sides issue. And even if it is, that doesn't disprove what happened to Charlie Kirk. It doesn't justify what happened to Charlie Kirk. So either way, it's ridiculous. It's a stupid argument. And generally, the ones who are inciting violence are the left. All right. Again, you don't see any prominent conservative calling for violence against anybody, do you? So I'm not having it. I'm not having it when people come out and say it's a both sides issue and I'm better than both sides. I don't know why that's annoying me so much, but I'm more annoyed by the nihilistic centrists who think they're better than everybody than I am the left, because you expect it from the left. But these idiots who, I would rather these nihilistic idiots just kept their mouths shut, to be honest. I really would. Where was I? Yeah, being pro Second Amendment doesn't mean you agree with people being shot for no reason. Okay, being pro Second Amendment believes, shows that you believe in the right to bear arms. That's what that means. That's all it means. Okay, because it's our God-given right. Okay, you take away our guns, what happens? People start getting stabbed. Okay, that's just what happens. Listen to a podcast called Anti-Humans by Marta Maid. It details commie atrocities just after World War II. Yeah, there were numerous atrocities committed by commies in World War II. And it just conveniently gets forgotten about because we're Nazis, Germany was certainly the good side compared to the Soviet Union. Oh, well, Germany were way, way, way better than the Soviet Union. Way better, The hubris of the United States is also incredible when they claim to have defeated Japan all by themselves, when more than half of Japan's militaries were fighting China. Yeah, Japan invaded China. They forget about that. Japan invaded China and were defeated. Okay? If it wasn't for that, the United States probably wouldn't have got a look in, Probably wouldn't have. America wants to do with the Mortegu plan to the German evil. They wanted to starve and mass kill the German people, but decided not to drive them to the Soviet side. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, either way, the Soviets were a lot worse. Utopian thinkers are uniquely evil. Yeah, exactly. Because again, if you're a utopian, that means you are going to have to kill scores of people, right? For your utopian society to come to fruition, you have to murder people. Okay, you have to murder a lot of people. Okay, it just goes without saying, Where was I? I'd be a top tier fascist leader, mate. Del, let me tell you right now. See if you ran for president or you ran for prime minister, and if you got it, and if I was told when you got into office, you would be a fascist dictator of this country, I'd vote for you instantly. Now, obviously, if it was someone like, say, I don't know, if it was someone like BFTB, I don't know, or the boxing librarian or whatever, was going to become a fascist dictator of the UK, I'm gonna have a problem with that. Okay, but if it was yourself, I would vote for you in an instant because I know that with you in charge, you're gonna use your power for good. I know that. Okay, again, fascism from that perspective is not inherently bad. Yeah. See, David was a man who did some evil things, like, for example, his coveting his neighbor's wife, Bathsheba, and he led to his wife being killed so that he could have her, right? David did bad things. He did some great things, but he also did some bad things, right? So he was bad and good, right? But God used David. He used David to essentially spread his message across the world. God uses evil people for good things, and God uses evil for itself for good things. He works in mysterious ways. All of my chats, and some of them might be just disappeared automatically. I'm seeing some of your chats. Jews and Arabs both Semitic. I can see that. Yeah, some of them YouTube are probably just deleting them. Hi Nordic, just got in from work. Yeah, how's it going, man? I'm going to have my tea. Recently bought Charlie Cook's book, Right Wing Revolution. Should be delivered to my house next month. Looking forward to reading it. Yeah, great, man. And I'm going to do that too. I'm going to buy all Charlie Cook's books, and I'm going to read them all. After I've read like The Hobbit and that, I'm probably gonna read all them. I'm also going to read a book. If you guys heard of the book Scientific Facts in the Bible by Ray Comfort, I'd appreciate, or I'd encourage everybody to read that. Very important book. it also seems like there were many others who had prior knowledge. Yeah. Again, a lot of people said, all right, people were saying things like, R.I.P. Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, like days before it happened. Predictive programming, if you ask me. Nordic is my number one source of Twitter news. Yeah. Do you know, Twitter actually temporarily suspended me yesterday, and they removed all my followers. Oh, no, they removed all my followings, but then about an hour later, they put them back. I think I requested a review, and they found that I'd done nothing wrong. So, yeah, fair play, eh? I'd appreciate everybody follow me on Twitter, by the way. Yes, there are numerous coaches that never had an amateur fight. I believe Anatoly Lomachenko never had one. Yeah, Melanie Mack is a grifter. I mean, that's basically an e-thought. You know. What am I doing? But I've just realised the time. It's nearly 6:10. And yeah, I'm gonna have to get ready for work soon. So yeah, just a little short one here. There was a couple more things I wanted to talk about, but I kind of went off topic. So yeah, I apologise. I apologise for that. Yeah, you're right, Gareth. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Anybody who stuck around, God bless each and every one of you. Yeah, stay vigilant, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm going to be very busy over the next few days. I've got a lot of shifts that I've been booked in for. So we'll see. I've recorded some of the footage for the Razor Ruddock video. Some of that's in production right now, as well as a couple others. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be hectic though. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'm glad you guys stuck around. Had an interesting discussion. Yeah. See you guys pretty soon. God bless each and every one of you. Stay vigilant. Thanks for watching.